My story, 2nd grade, 10/23/2024. When I went to 2nd grade at Douglas School, where they said the school was haunted and was said to be built on the side of an old Indian graveyard. But I've never seen any ghosts there. But I had many of good times there and learned many lessons there from reading math and history, along with morality of treating other people with respect even when they are suffering from many different types of problems. This is where I came to learn that you should treat people the way you wanted to be treated yourself, as quoted in the Bible, do unto others as you'd have do unto you. My day would start where a yellow taxi would come and pick me up at my house along with a number of other kids in the cab, which was fun, but embarrassing as well. Had some many interesting moments in the cab, such as listening to the two-wave radio where the cab would receive their message from their dispatchers to pick people up. It inspired me to get my ham radio license years later. One of the big moral lessons I learned was when a friend of mine, who I did not know, had a glass eye, and one day he took it out, and I thought it was magic, and I was brought down to the principal office and received a tail job because I was talking about it. He is still a good friend, and I still hear from him once in a while. But there was many children there with wide spectrum of learning disability. But I had a great teacher, Miss Asburn. She had a passion for her work in helping children. I remember she would do this lesson with a kit called Language Time. It came with a reel-to-reel recording in a puppet, and the song would go something like this. It's playing with time, laying guitar till you have fun. I'm people the puppet, how do you do? I'm here to have some fun with you. We will laugh for a while and sing a while. Come on, let's learn a while. Something like that anyways. In the kit there was a hand puppet of a dog with a monaco, and I think a graduation cap, and looked to be like a beagle, that she would put on her hands and sing with the song. It language time, time to have some fun. I am pupil the puppet, how do you do? I'm here to have some fun with you. In the mid-morning, we would receive a small carton of milk to drink for a break. At lunchtime, we would go down to the gymnasium, where we would take our lunch bags or box and eat on the floor. Then we had recess afterward, where when it was kind of cold out, we would go to the utility rooms, where the boilers to heat the school was at to keep warm. The boiler looked like a big donkey, so we called it the donkey. I also remember a very tragic event that took place when I was going to Douglas. There was a student that was going to Edison Junior High that a taxi would pick up, and he was in a wheelchair. Then we quit picking him up, and was told he was very sick, and that was the last we've seen of him. And some time later we've seen his obituary in the newspaper, that apparently he died from his illness. In 3rd grade I was put back into regular class at C.B. Smith, where the teacher, Mrs. Renfro, would read us stories from The Wizard of Oz and Charlotte's Web, which I found very enjoyable. She was an excellent reader. Then I fell ill and fell behind in class, and they sent me back to special education. To finish 3rd grade I was sent to Sunset Hills, where Mrs. Asburn was transferred there, as well as our teacher. I remembered some of the events while I was going to school there, such as our friend Jim Board was building a road behind the school. I remembered another morality stories when I found a nest of baby birds in the fields and made the mistake thinking I could raise them. They soon passed away, but learned a valuable lesson to let nature tend to our own. Another interesting memory I had was bringing a microscope that belonged to my grandfather's doctor's office, which was all brass and everything worked. What curiosity we found all over the classroom was a lot of fun. I also remember bringing in my electronic science project, in which I put together from a Radio Sack learning kit a Morse code practice cue. And I also had a crystal radio set as well. I also remembered next door was another handicapped class that taught people with hearing problems. I remember having trouble trying to understand what they were saying because they could not hear themselves speak too well, and learn you needed a lot of patience when talking to students from their class. In the 4th grade, we were taxed to a different class at McKinley School, where my teacher was Mrs. Tilton. It was an interesting year for the most part, and the teacher was wonderful, except there was the episode where she had a nervous breakdown with one of her students when she came into the room crying and talking about how she was taking prescription medicine to deal with this problem. This particular student was a big challenge in comparison to the rest of the class, where he was on the lower end of the spectrum, and he could not grasp reading or writing and could barely count. Very few teachers at that point had a lot of experience teaching special education to a wide variety of spectrums in one class. In the late 60s, my mother enrolled in the Miller Reading Clinic in Peoria, Illinois. Every Saturday, we would drive up there for an hour session where I had special lesson on how to read. She would then take me somewhere special, such as at lunch or McNaughton Park, and go up into the water tower that overlooked the river valley. My parents also brought to the house several times a week a tutor to help me in my reading, writing and math, and I remember it was on at about the same time Strange Paradise and Dark Saddle was being aired on the TV show, which was a big buzz without my friends. In the 4th grade, we were taxed to Sunset Hill School, where my teacher was Mrs. Dawson. She was a little more stern, but she was an excellent teacher. They also put me into a couple of regular classes as well. The teacher's name was Mrs. Heiser, and was a friend of my mother's who played bridge together. I do remember one time when she said she was listening to the radio, and they called our house, and I picked up the phone, and I was supposed to say hello giant for a prize. I remember that the schools around that time, the schools started installing a specialized TV along program that was aired through a non-commercial broadcaster in Peoria. The TV had special carts and would be rolled into the room that would plug into a specialized cable system. They would broadcast at different times programs such as math along reading and history on different channels. It was also during this time they were broadcasting the launching of the Apollo program to send man to the moon. We would watch broadcasts of launching and moon landings along with splashdowns. In the 7th and 8th grade, instead of being picked up by a taxi, we had to catch the city bus to Washington Junior High School. My teacher was Mrs. Pittman, who too was a wonderful teacher. We had a lot of different adventures together with my fellow students, such as going to a small corner restaurant to eat toast and jelly, and to go on behind the bookstore, where they would tear off the cover of the front of books and magazines and throw them into the dumpster. We would find many interesting books in there. I also remember in gym class, we would play a game called Bombardment, where balls were set in the center of the gym, and 2 sides were on the opposite side, and we would run and grab the balls, and if we've got hit by a ball, you are out. I always seemed to manage to be the last one to be out, but there would usually be a group of them still, and they would bomb me out. Another fun thing we would do in the gym was wrestling with these handheld big cushion baton that we would wrestle each other with by hit and blows to each other with these baton. I would always volunteer to take on the biggest kid in my class and always lost, but it was all in good fun. Another fun thing was there was a governor by the name of Dan Walker, so the coach always called me the governor. Yes, there was also a time when me and 2 other boys were horsing around and got sent to the principal office for a tail job. How was the first one to take the 3 swats? The principal turned around after I took mine, for I was laughing uncontrollably because the other 2 boys were crying like babies. The principal said, "If you keep laughing, you're gonna get 3 more swats," so I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing at the other 2 boys from crying.